guys, my name is Zeta, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my top tips on how to crush this semester. No matter what kind of major you are, everyone has difficult classes that we all have to get through. So hopefully the tips that I share with you today, you can use whenever you go back to school this year in order to be an academic weapon. Just for a bit of context, I am a senior in undergrad right now and I am studying biochemistry. So a lot of my tips that I have learned have come along with studying chemistry classes, math, and biology. However, all of these tips are pretty versatile where you can use it in any sort of class. And I hope that these can help you in order to just get overall better study habits, manage your time, and have a less stressful semester. That way you can get straight A's, learn the material, and be able to crush college with ease. So tip number one is by far my biggest hack in order to stay on top of my classes and be able to manage my stress and learn the material quickly. It is a technique known as priming. And let me explain. It is where you review the notes ahead of time. So if you know that you are having a lecture on chapter 2 in your biology class, skim over chapter 2 in the textbook. Now, I say skim, I do not mean read. If you read the chapter before every single lecture for all of your classes, you will quickly get overwhelmed, especially in biology or in other classes where the chapters are pretty thick. That is not what you want to do. What I try to do is I just look at the key points that are usually highlighted at the very beginning of every chapter, or sometimes it's listed at the end of a chapter. It will give a brief summary of everything that was discussed. I take a look at that and I just briefly skim through. I'm talking no more than 15 to 30 minutes. I do that either the night before or the morning of my lecture. I just make sure that I review the notes or the chapter beforehand. That way, when you get to lecture, you already know what you're walking into. Because I don't know about you, but every time I'm learning something new, it seems very daunting, especially new vocabulary or concepts I've never heard before. What I try to do is just briefly skim it over so that I'm already getting familiar with the content that we will be covering, as well as I try to build connections. For example, say you are about to read a chapter on the citric acid cycle, and the chapter that you just learned before was on glycolysis. When you're reviewing that chapter on the citric acid cycle, you may not know anything about the citric acid cycle. And do not go into it expecting you're going to learn in that 15 to 30 minutes that you're sitting there reading it. You don't need to know what substrates are in the citric acid cycle or anything like that. You will learn that in your heavier studying sessions. What you need to focus on is, okay, I'm going to learn about the citric acid cycle, and what we learned before? Oh, it was glycolysis. Oh, the citric acid cycle is after glycolysis. That must be where it connects. The substrate in glycolysis links to the citric acid cycle. That is a connection point. You know already about glycolysis because assuming you learned it in your last chapter, you would have already learned that. And so then you can start making these connections, but you don't need to pressure yourself to learn anything. Just think about the material and just know what you're walking into. That way, when you walk into your lecture, you will know what to expect and it won't catch you off guard. You'll already know what words to listen for. Maybe you'll already have some questions. Maybe you'll already have been thinking about how does this relate to the other things that I've been learning. That is what you want. And I'm telling you, it is a game changer. I make myself try to stay ahead of my lectures by just simply reviewing it, even just for 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes. Even if it's during lunch, briefly skim over some slides if your professor provides slides ahead of time, or briefly look over the textbook. I'm telling you, it makes a difference, at least for me. Okay, so the last tip was what to do before your lecture or before class. Now, what to do in class. Now, this could vary from person to person. I have seen so many different ways of taking notes, so many different ways people pay attention in class and synthesize the information while they're in class and paying attention. I recommend whatever method of note-taking you have, keep it organized and keep it simple. I have seen such elaborate notes, and granted, that works in high school. That may work in smaller classes where the material is a lot less. But when you are in multiple classes, speaking from a STEM major, when you're in multiple classes where all of the content is extremely heavy and you're getting overloaded with a lot of information, what I do personally is my notes are short and sweet. I do not have time to copy slides. In fact, I think it is a little bit of a waste of time. If you want to do that on your own time, that's fine. But most classes, professors go way too fast for you to copy every slide, and you're not really learning the material, you're just regurgitating it, and you're not really understanding it. So what I like to do is I just quickly jot down main ideas, and a lot of times I draw diagrams. That is what I find the most helpful, is whenever I see key pathways, especially in biology or chemistry, chemical equations, structures, when you get into organic chemistry, reactions, that I love to draw. Just be able to draw and represent everything in a visual way. But I am a visual learner, so I understand that that may not work for everyone, but I highly recommend whatever note-taking strategy you use, just make sure that it's efficient enough that you can do it quickly within a class setting and being able to keep up with the lecture without having to fall behind and try to copy old slides while the lecture is already moving on. I would say just keep it short, sweet, and organized. Whether that's on an iPad, whether that's traditional note-taking. I like traditional notes, but that's because I don't own an iPad. But whatever works for you, I definitely think notes are effective. I just think that they need to be short and sweet. So for the third tip, I highly recommend, if you have breaks between your classes, which most people do, or I try to aim to schedule a break, but if you don't, then maybe this tip will not work for you. But what I like to do is immediately after I am done with class, please review what you learned. It's similar to the priming that I had talked about. It does not need to be super long or intense. You just need anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes where you are looking through the notes that you just took, and if possible, answer questions. I know this may not be possible for every type of class, but if you are in a chemistry class or a math class where a lot of times they give you homework where you have problems that you need to solve, try to answer a couple practice ones, just 2 or 3, just to get your mind thinking about what you just learned and how it applies to a problem. That way, when you are sitting down to study for an exam, you're already thinking about how is what I just learned going to be shown on an exam. That will help you a lot in the long run. Instead of waiting and cramming last minute, if you just spend that 5 to 30 minutes after class, in between classes, just looking over your notes and going over just a handful of practice questions, you will save yourself. Speaking from experience, I find when I do not stay on top of just simple practice, I am having to cram last minute for hours trying to learn what could be on the exam. But if you just stay on top of it, you're already going to be thinking, oh, this is probably how this is going to show up. Oh, I've already tested myself on this material. I'm already kind of getting the hang of it. And it will be difficult at first, but that's why you do it ahead of time. Assuming you have plenty of time before your next exam, you're already just thinking about these ideas and how they work in problems. So I highly recommend that, especially if you want to get good grades on exams. It also will just help you retain that information and put it into long-term memory. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about isn't something that you may think of when you are trying to get good grades, but is extremely important. And that's just taking care of your overall health. Your diet doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to try your best to eat clean. You need to get at least 8 hours of sleep, and you need to be taking care of yourself. For me, that involves movement, eating healthy, and sleeping good. I try my best to exercise every day, and I do think it makes a difference in your overall cognitive performance. I can tell when I'm not working out, I have a hard time focusing. I can't pay attention in class. Whatever it may be, it doesn't even have to be super strenuous. It could just be some mild stretching, going for a walk. You need to take care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself and you show up for yourself, you are going to work harder and you are going to do well in class. So that may be something that you maybe don't think about when you're thinking of school. You think, I need to cram, I need to spend hours and hours and hours studying. But no, you need to take time out of your day to take care of yourself. It is just as important as the time you spend studying, the time you spend taking care of yourself. Now, this tip is mainly for when you are doing your focused study sessions. So when you sit down and study for a class, if possible, I recommend trying to teach. Now, I know that may be extremely daunting at first. You could do this with a friend if you want, but a lot of people may not have a friend who's willing to sit and listen to a bunch of information. If you have a friend in your class, that would be great. You guys can teach each other. But I know for me, sometimes that just was not available to me at the time. So what I would do is I would set up my phone and I would try to teach. Sometimes that would involve me writing everything on a whiteboard in a study room, or just simply talking like I am with you face to face over a concept that I learned. That is honestly one of the best ways to remember information, is if you can teach it to someone else, because you don't actually realize what you don't know until you are sitting there trying to explain something. Because you may think in your head, oh, I understand this information. Oh, I definitely know that. But that's because it's sitting right in front of you. When you're looking at your notes, you have that recall where, of course, you're looking at the information right in front of you. So yes, you think you know it. But when you are sitting in front of your friend and you are trying to explain to them something, then it becomes a lot more difficult, and you start to realize where you may have gaps. They may ask you questions, and if you don't know how to answer those questions, you see areas where you can improve. That is why it is one of the best techniques to tutor someone, or just simply filming yourself if you don't have a friend available, or partner, anyone really who's willing to sit and listen to you. Just ask them, hey, I'm studying for this exam, it's very important, or I'm studying for this class and I really want to learn this information. Could I take the time to teach you about it? And that way I can reflect upon what I need to improve upon. And so that is one of my biggest tips, is when you are taking the time to study, try to teach someone, or at least implement that practice in some of your studying sessions. Another way that I do these teaching lessons is also sometimes I just write it out on paper, little lesson plans. So if I was to teach a concept, I mainly did this in math. I'm not the best at math, but one of the best ways that I found that I could learn math easier was I would write on a piece of paper a practice problem, and then I would do a step-by-step solution guide as if I was writing like a textbook. You know those textbook solutions where it will tell you every step of the way and how to do it in different colored pens? I tried my best to know how to do every type of problem. So whenever I was faced with a problem, I could think to myself, oh, I remember the steps. I remember the steps that I had to teach. I wrote it all on paper. Step 1, you need to substitute this or distribute this, whatever it may be. That is how I did it. I only ever did that in my math classes though, so I don't know how well that works in other classes, but that is just one option as well. If you don't feel comfortable talking out loud, you could just try to write out what you would say if you were teaching someone, or a step-by-step guide like that. All right, so let's talk about goals. Now, I'll be honest with you. If you are not someone who naturally just has the inclination of, yes, I want to study, because most people don't. Most people do not want to study or sit down and have to learn material for their classes because in the moment it may seem boring. However, that is why having goals is really going to be what carries you through. Whatever type of goal that may be, could just simply be that you want straight A's because that may make you feel good. Maybe it's a challenge that you have and it's something that you want to achieve. But it could also be something like, I have plenty of friends that are pre-med and I know they want to become a physician. So when they study, their goal is, I want to get into medical school, but more importantly, I want to be a knowledgeable physician to help people. Or maybe you want to be a professor one day. And if you want to be a professor, maybe you are wanting to master this information so that you can learn how to teach it to other people. Maybe you are an entrepreneur and you want to know how to grow businesses. And maybe you want to know how to teach other people how to do the same. Whatever it is your goal is, long-term, short-term, whatever it may be, you want to have goals that make it clear to you why it is you want to do well in school. You want to have goals that put yourself in alignment where you are able, whenever you are feeling like, I do not want to study, that is the last thing I want to do right now, you can look to your goals and go, okay, yes, I may not want to study, but man, I want to be a great physician one day, and maybe this knowledge is going to help me. And this may be hard right now, and this is something I do not want to do, but I have goals that are bigger than that. And so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do it because I have goals that I want to get to. That is going to be what sets you apart when you are feeling tired and you do not want to do the extra 15 minutes of practice problems, the extra step of reviewing the material beforehand. You're not going to want to take care of yourself or do any of the things that I had mentioned if you do not have clear goals that make you want to get up and learn. So I think that is one of the most important things. If you do not know your goal, that is okay. I would just sit down. It doesn't have to be a career goal. It could be whatever it is you want. Make your parents proud. I'm not here to judge whatever your goal is, but I will say you're going to need clear goals in order to push yourself to do things that you do not want to do. And so that is the last tip that I think you need in order to be successful in school, in order to do well in your classes. So that's it for the video, guys. That was just a couple tips. Honestly, I could go way more into how I stay organized, how I manage my time, especially with working 3 jobs and still staying full-time in college. I could talk about ways to manage classes all day. But here's just a couple of tips to help you before the next semester, whether you're already in school or you're like me and classes are coming very soon. I hope that these help you and that you are able to have an amazing year and that this year is going to be your best year yet. I hope that you crush these classes and that you do amazing like the academic weapon you are. And as always, I hope you guys stay happy and healthy and crush it in class.